Analytical essay of Joyce Carol Oates. Story in Hiding. Oates is an American author who has written many well-known short stories. One of her most famous is called In Hiding. It was released in 2004, and we chose to do an analytical essay about it because it looks on the contrast between an author's personal life and the one we see through her poetry. The text itself is about a woman who receives poetry from an inmate who is using a lot of street talk in his poetry and how she handles all this poetry she receives. Analytical point one, the relationships in the story. We have made a characterization of the main character. The main character is a woman who is a poet. She is 40 years old and she has a son. She is well known from her works and she is a teacher at a university. And we also made a characterization of Johnson. Johnson is an inmate at a prison, of course, and he sends poetry to the main character. Johnson is a black man. We decided to look at the contrast and similarities in the text between the main character and Johnson, also called Woody. The contrast is that the main character is a free person. She isn't an inmate like Johnson is. And also that the author, or the main character, who is an author, is a woman and Johnson is a man. And also we looked at the similarities, like they're both poets. But the contrast in their poetry is that Johnson uses very, very street kind of talk to describe his poetry. And the main character, we don't really hear about her poetry, but I would guess it was formal. The text itself takes place in Orleans, New York, which is where the main character lives with her son Rick.
Our analytical point two is narrative technique. Under narrative technique, we have themes, language, and composition. In themes, we chose life of a poet. The main character gives out a lot of information of her personal life in her poems, but in reality, she is very shy. Another theme is only mother. The main character is an only mother, and then not being able to have a sexual life and having to hide the men in her life from her son. This affects the main character because she has to have two separate lives, the one with her son and her secret lives, the one with all the men. Another point is language. The story is a one-sided story. It reflects only the main character's feelings and point of view. The language is indirect narration and is very time and season describing. The composition. The composition is chronologic and not in medias res because it has an opening. Between the opening and the ending, there is a process between the two characters, Johnson and the main character, who we do not have a name on. The story ends with an open ending.
And then we have analytical point three, which is the climax of the story. And the first point is what message the climax sends. And the climax sends a message about that you can't overthink everything in your life. And you can't be sure if something is going to make you happy, even if it comes through your door. The next is what message the title sends. It sends a message about you can't hide from stuff in your life, and the main character hides in her house when a knocking is at her door. Therefore, the title is In Hiding. And the climax leads up to Um, and the climax in the story is in the end, where she hides because she's afraid of confrontation of something that could make her happy. And the story ends with her son asking, "Mom, why are you hiding?" So therefore, also the title.
Well, we also wanted to look at how the climax was shown in the story and if it led up to it. And it doesn't really, because it's a climax. But the text shows us that she's afraid of the thing and kind of shoves it away. But in the climax, she's confronted with the man, and then she hides. So therefore, it doesn't get let out. Well, we can conclude that the message shows us a very strong. It's a strong message that the story gives, because you can't really hide things away as you wanted to, because someday you're gonna get it in your face, like she is. And she's a strong, independent woman, but she couldn't handle it. And that's our conclusion. And thanks for listening.